I'll pause it for a moment. And participants. Okay, you guys. Are you guys ready? Should we do this?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. And when I kick off, I'll introduce you guys by name, and then I'll invite you to also introduce yourself or add in some color as well related to your institution and the title. Sound good?
Yep.
Okay, here we go. Welcome, welcome, welcome to this amBaaSsador webinar where we are going to dig a bit deeper into this whole concept related to community banking. And I don't know, this is something that Steve and I hear quite a bit, and I'm so excited to get our panelists' viewpoints on if we're throwing away community bank with banking as a service, whether we're building a new community bank with banking as a service, if they actually have to be mutually exclusive topics. Because believe it or not, this is one of those, I think it's a heartfelt belief for many people that are considering this space, thinking that they are needing to make a choice. So we're going to dig into that today with a variety of questions with two individuals that are absolute top-notch and thought leaders in the space. Now, I'm going to start with the fellow lady here, Annalisa Grandner. I want to thank you, Annalisa, for joining us today. You have such a rich history that we're going to get into with your past and what you're presently doing with First Bank of the Lake. So I'll give you just the opportunity to introduce yourself in just one moment. And then a guy that, I mean, David, we just saw you this weekend under unfortunate circumstances where the Chiefs lost to the Eagles, but at least we got a chance to see the David Robinson. And David, I do love your title, Director of Embedded Banking with Academy Bank up in the Kansas City marketplace area, where we just learned a little bit earlier, Annalisa's headed that way next week. So we're going to go ahead and get started, but before we do, allow me to just mention my name. I am Stacy Bishop. I'll be hosting this discussion today alongside of a gentleman that had introduced me to banking as a service several years ago. I happen to be married to the gentleman, and he is a practitioner in this space as well, Mr. Stephen Bishop. So Steve, I'll also let you tell us a little bit more about yourself, but I do want to go to Annalisa first. So Annalisa, would you care to tell us just a bit about you, your history in banking as a service, and what you're focused on now, please, ma'am?
Sure. Back in my day, I feel like I've been in this space for so long that I need to start an introduction that way. I started in the space about 17 years ago at the Bank Corp before the term fintech was even coined, and certainly well before banking as a service was a thing. We started doing true private label banking for trust companies, registered investment advisors, and broker dealers that were looking to add banking products to their suite of offerings. So truly embedded banking way back when. And I was fortunate to be at the Bank Corp when programs like Simple, Borrow, Chime were just coming into the market. So I was able to work directly with them and others like EPS, Walgreens, Google Wallet, etc. So it's been a very long but exciting road in this space. I then went over to Cross River to build out their banking as a service program, and was pulled into running PPP. After that, I came to First Bank of the Lake to build out their banking as a service slash private label banking program, and we're coming along quite well. We've really built out a team that really is pretty much a dream team across the board, across most of the verticals of the bank. So we're excited to hit the market, hopefully very soon.
I love this. So I love, Annalisa, just from the moment that I met you, just have enjoyed every conversation because for many of the reasons that you mentioned. First of all, you're a nice person. You're
Hey, Stacy.
legitimately a nice person, but you're also, dare I say, one of the
Stacey,
Yeah, you wanna,
you're cutting out a little bit.
Oh, no, I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
Well,
we
not anymore, of course.
Yeah.
So.
I was not anymore, of course. Well, I'll try to pay attention to my internet connectivity. I was effusively saying how much I like Annalisa, that she was an OG in this space with some of the players that she's been involved in, and that she survived PPP. She's come out the other side and now finds herself at an organization where early in their process, and they are just full steam ahead on with banking as a service.
All right, so Stacey, you're cutting
A
out.
little better.
I want to
You
turn
all
it over
time.
to.
If I'm going to turn to things, fellow, talk a little bit about yourself and Academy Bank's role in the banking as a service realm.
Yeah, sure thing. Happy to be here. I am the super sub for those that thought they were going to see Mark Remberger, but Steve told me, Mark, if you're listening and maybe on a recording, that I expect the best looking Hawaiian shirt. I'm an XL, so put it in the mail. Fortunately, I'm wearing there's like fabric on here, so pattern on here, so I'm in the mode of Mark. So, but I've been with Academy Bank for about 2.5 years. Hired to stand up the practice,
That's
not
right.
so dissimilar from Annalisa. And prior to that, I was with UMB. I didn't realize, Annalisa, you came from Bancorp. A portion of your history there was a similar business line at UMB, where we supported sort of the broker-dealer community with payments, banking as a service before it was banking as a service. And that's where I got my chops. Kept leaning into payments, and that led me here to Academy Bank. So exciting times.
Well, we're all hoping that that you live up to the expectations set by
Oh my
Mark.
gosh.
We're rooting for you, David.
Not possible.
All right. Well, I think we might have lost Stacey. So we'll go ahead and get going. If each of you, so I'm Steve Bishop, and I
Wonderful.
built.
Well, I do.
All right, Stacey.
Sorry, I'm gonna go.
There you go.
All right.
You got it.
So I'm Steve Bishop, and apologies for the technical difficulties. I built embedded finance banking program for a community bank, and recently joined another one, repeating the playbook and going to market. So I think we'll have a fun conversation of just talking about how you can build a new community through your bank through BaaS. So Annalisa, we'll let you take the first one. Just kind of tell. Let's hear the First Bank of the Lake story, and then David will follow up with the Academy Bank, because I think you're on different parts of the journey. David, you've been in it for a couple of years, have a few live programs, and then Annalisa, you're just now getting ready to roll out your first one. So, Annalisa.
Yeah, happy to chat a little bit about the bank. The bank is a $1.8 billion bank that was about 180 million about 5 years ago, prior to our SBA unit coming to the bank. We have, I would say, probably 70 to 80% of our workforce right now is dedicated specifically to government guaranteed lending and community banking. And we've seen just tremendous growth from that particular vertical. So of course, as we continue to gain strength on the lending side, we needed a counterbalance, and that's where I'm coming in to help bring in some of the deposits to the bank to help support the all of the bank's verticals across the board.
Mr. Robinson, can you tell us a little bit about the Academy story?
Yeah, so I joined December of 22, and I think our leadership team has they meet throughout the year, but they have a meaningful planning session in early summer. In the early summer of 22, there was prior to my arrival, there were investments in venture funds that get access to first look at what's happening in the marketplace. And I think at that time, the leaders were looking at our business, looking at mature parts of our business, and looking at ways to diversify. And that led to a decision to commit to a fintech practice, banking as a service. Started with my hiring and has continued throughout the organization. I think even over the past 12 months, we've made key hirings in the areas of data, payments, and then we've had a traditional sort of CIO, Chief Information Officer, technology organization. And now we've seen the benefits that could come from a CIO and a CTO role. So we're also making changes in that way to support the growing practice here, then also give benefit to the other parts of the organization.
See if I can
you.
pop in here.
Okay.
Oh, sorry,
Very
Steve.
good. Yeah,
How,
go for it.
listen now, I've stopped sharing my screen, you all. Hopefully we won't be challenged as much. But I think we were finishing up just where the each FI was in their journey and how everyone got here. And I guess I do want to start with this big overarching question about what does a community bank even mean? I think it's important for us to talk about that before we can really identify if BaaS is going to kill your community focus or if it's going to enhance it differently. So I will once again start with Annalisa. Annalisa, what does a community bank mean to you, or community banking?
Um, yeah, so I do think that that the definition of the term community banking has evolved as the industry has continued to evolve, and it's now well beyond the definition of more of a geographic location, which is really what the bank's genesis was. It was supporting communities within the Osage Beach area. With the advent of our government guaranteed lending unit and the strength that that unit brought about, and really the broader, more national exposure that the bank got because of that vertical, I think it's dramatically expanded our community to really service specific verticals that have needs that are a little more unique in the space. Some needs such as small businesses have across the board, particularly small businesses looking for lending, particular niches, whether we're talking about whether that's the education space and the particular needs that that students have, that universities have, or if we want to kind of expand beyond that into specific verticals. Are there particular aspects of banking that are challenging for truckers, for astronauts, for a number of different communities in the broader space? So I would say that our definition of community continues to expand along with our services.
Think this is fascinating, and this is a common through line that I'm seeing as well in operators in the space. But David, let me also turn that question to you from the Academy Bank side. Does community mean something a little bit different to you than the geographic area?
I think we probably tend to lean on the traditional definition, serving the communities where we are. We have two bank brands. We have Academy Bank and Armed Forces Bank. So Academy Bank is prominently in Kansas City, Denver, and Scottsdale, and then we're getting into Northwest Arkansas. And most of our commercial and consumer business in those markets remain in those markets. And then Armed Forces serves the military community, and that's across the U.S. Obviously, at times they're deployed. Those are for military families and active duty military and retired military. And those are two examples of how we see ourselves being active in the community.
Right. So in Annalisa's case, I think I hear more of this concept where community is expanding and evolving for you. Still some focusing on niche aspects, like perhaps individuals that look like this or require these services, astronauts, truckers, etc., while still meeting the Osage Beach areas. David, it seems as if definition for Academy and Armed Forces right now, two sister organizations, are a bit more focused on geography, which also makes sense, especially those are pretty strong geographies you're talking about there.
Yep.
Steve, let me ask you this, Steve, because you have recently signed on to go to work for a bank, a single entity bank, single branch location. Has there been a great deal of discussion about what community bank means for the Jenny Bank team?
Yeah, I think the wonderful thing about embedded finance, I think both of the David and Elisa have touched on it. You have a community, and if you talk to community banks, credit unions across the U.S., they're like our customer service. But if you go drill even further beyond just customer service, it's what is your niche? What are you providing within that community? And so, yes, I was with previously a very traditional community bank. It was very focused on geographical. It was county seats and rural areas was like kind of our niche where we focused our branch distribution. But when you have a branch distribution brick and mortar, you were tied to that community, like within a certain miles from that brick and mortar building. But you can still have that niche play. You can have that strategic component of embedded finance and go beyond that. So it's if I want to specialize in the as analytic like truckers, like small business meeting that needs, it's a opens up the whole nation or like your geography no longer limits you, but you can still focus on that niche. So you're bringing that customer service. It's just something that I really love and appreciate about this space is you can still be that community banker. It's a broader geographic, but it can still be a small community where you're able to tailor those customer services to that specialty.
Yeah, for sure. So I tend to agree with these all of the definitions that I've heard thus far, but both niche or industry segment focused as well as geographic focused. Let me throw this out there for consideration because coming from in the vast majority of my experience working for one of the big three core companies, we also defined community banks by asset size. Were we off base in doing that? Because for us, any bank under the range shifted a bit, but it could be under 500 million, under 750 million. It got up to the point where it was about a billion-ish. Under those asset sizes, at least internally, we would use the nomenclature community banking. Were we off base there, guys? Or is that another indication of how to categorize a community bank?
I think it just depends on what your intention is in creating those categories. I will say for us, the difference between who we were at 800 million and who we are at 1.8 is not huge. Obviously, there's a few other regulations that kick in and a few other nuanced pieces that we need to be aware of and responsive to. But it doesn't change the DNA of the bank. It doesn't change the culture of the bank. I would say what is more of and certainly not an artificial threshold, but certainly a threshold created by regulation is the 10 billion range. Above that, obviously the economics change dramatically for this space. So below that, I don't know that there's a significant enough differentiation.
Okay.
Yeah, I just, I sort of share that sort of dividing line at 10 billion as well. We at 4.5 billion have much more in common with those below us than above 10 billion for sure. So I think everybody in that segment is,
Yeah, and
seeing
those
a
of
lot
us
of
at
the same
200 million.
experiences.
No. Yeah.
What's that?
I was going to agree with you, David. Like we're just over 200 million and definitely on the smaller scale, but like there really there's a difference between a 999 million and a billion from a reporting standpoint.
No.
You have to do a little bit more robust, but from a BaaS perspective, it's really the same. Like the Durbin rule, the 10 billion, that's where you see the interchange. And it's not that it doesn't fit in those like above 10 billion or beneath. You just have some certain advantages, which it makes it even more of a reason why community banks should be exploited. And
Okay.
there's a definitely a lack of supply of sponsor banks, and that's why I think we're wanting to have these conversations just to let people look at it and say, is this the right move for me?
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything that's been said here. If I can press on this a little bit more, you all. So, Steve, you mentioned the current bank size, 200 million. You're implementing BaaS. There's a very valid argument that in not so many years, you may be 2 billion, you may be 4 billion, like David, you may be larger at that point. Are you suggesting that you're still going to think of yourself as a community bank with the same strategies, with the same topics? In mind going into leadership meetings. And I'm not trying to be controversial. I'm interested in this. Is
You know,
10
we
billion truly the point where you're no longer a community bank? You know what
I
I'm
think you're
saying?
spot on because we have been agreeing too much. I completely blame David for this. Thank you, David, again for stepping in last minute.
Yeah.
You're a great guy, regardless what Stacy says.
You know that's not for David.
So, do you think of yourself as a community bank? I think of, businesses think of themselves like this is my strategy is servicing this type of customers. So, I mean, well, I was going to say Nike, and they make shoes. They've obviously expanded well beyond that. But they did with Tiger Woods. They got into golf clubs, and they started to focus more on the apparel side, getting back to the roots. And so, as you grow, yes, you can expand, and you get above 10 billion. You can still consider yourself a community bank. It's how you define that community. You can look for those new instances, those new fintechs, those new distribution models of how you get to those customers because you're meeting them where they are, not just in your brick and mortar, which is really how the vast majority of banks are reaching their customers today.
Okay.
So, David or Annalisa, can you disagree with me on something? Like we need to get some
I
more.
I
Waiting
usually
for
take
later.
joy in disagreeing with you, but I will say that I don't see the bank's strategic direction changing until we're getting close to the 10 billion. And even at that point, there's things you can do to to ensure that you're still able to support the BaaS vertical. So
Yeah.
I mean, if we move on to another topic, I will
Okay.
gladly disagree.
And we are going to, but I do want to put just full circle on this one here because I truly do agree with you that community banking can mean something so very different to each institution. And it's going to be a personal type of definition for each institution. For one, it may be geography focused, and we are serving communities in these surrounding counties that we're reporting and seeing on the FDIC site. For others, it could be we work with doctors, we work with lawyers, we work with over the road truckers. That is our community, and we serve them regardless of where they are. David, perhaps in the future, Armed Forces Bank may well, that's kind of the approach you've taken, I guess, in that regard as well. So you're an interesting mixture there, David. Academy might be more geographic focused,
Oh, yeah,
whereas
for sure.
Armed Forces is definitely more niche
But
focused
yeah,
per segment.
and within that, I mean, our armed forces brand has less small business and commercial. There's really no commercial, some small business. And most of that resides in Academy Bank just by happenstance. It's just armed forces happens to be heavy retail.
Makes sense. And I also agree with you that asset size, it's always such an easy and candidly a flawed way to identify a community bank versus another size bank. But my last question on this topic, and then we'll get to where Annalisa can really start to disagree with Steve, but that is, can JP Morgan Chase and Bank of America then consider themselves a community bank? What do you guys think about this?
Touche.
Because I tend to have this natural aversion and say, no, they are not community banks. They are tier one, super regional. But now I'm wondering, what do you guys think?
I think JP Morgan can do whatever they want.
And they will.
The fact of the matter is there are parts of the industry that they're below their line, and I'm very happy for that. And we can run our business and build our business below their line where it's bountiful for us and it makes sense for us.
Yeah, you stay up here. We've got the rest of this covered, Jamie.
I mean, they're down the street here. You walk across Kansas City, you see every bank, large and small, and
Right.
It's a good thing.
Okay, we're going to get into a little bit later on just about the community within embedded banking later, but I'll save a thought there. Steve, what about you? These big tier one banks, are they community banks?
I would say they are not as like the little guy. I'm like, no, those are they're bastards. They're not community banks. Like they're charging for their data. No, I will say they do not approach it as a community bank. They have resources much broader than the typical what we consider a community bank. I will say, however, when I was at Citibank, we had a very close knit group that was like we were doing back office branch services. And so we had a tight knit team. So can they function as a community bank within this service? Yes. Are they community banks? No.
Seems like a very political answer, but I'm going to let it go this time. And
I was afraid somebody would disagree with me. I didn't want my feelings getting hurt. So
Is it time to disagree yet?
wait, what?
Oh, good Lord.
What the?
You said disagree, so let's get started.
Not. Oh, I feel like the gauntlet has been thrown,
Yeah.
gentlemen. Oh, and she's not taking it off. We're still having
No,
this.
Yeah.
David, it looks like you
I
invited
have
the
no Chiefs
to
gear in my
the game.
office.
Don't
This
either.
is I'm at a
Don't either.
conference. I can
I,
get some
I
swag
lived
out, but
outside of
it's
Philly. It's a requirement.
I didn't know that. Well, I will say that the Eagles fans were lovely in the stands. None of the things that they're often accused of in their own stadium. So
I was
they
going
were
to say, you sound surprised.
candidly, I was, but I mean, there was no booing Santa Claus or throwing batteries or anything like that. But no, they were absolutely all lovely. And I think they came into it knowing, yeah, we've got a good thing going here. But there's still time, Annalisa. All right, Steve, I have been asking a series of questions. Anything that you want to chat with our panelists about before I take back control? Trying to share.
what so David, I'm gonna start with you because you don't have an offensive hat on. Um and then we'll pass
I'm
it
going
on
to go
to
find
whoever
a
wants to take
jersey in a minute.
it. But what do you think is the biggest like misperception, or why do you think banks don't explore BaaS, or like what are your thoughts around that?
Um, I just think that there might be some traditional mindsets within the bank that would think that we have to bend over backwards and go against our principles to be able to make it. We get opportunities of all shapes and sizes, and we try to take a pragmatic approach to that. We consensus build around here, or get people involved, and I think over time, perspectives here even have shifted. And I think we started at a great starting point, but I think others on the sideline perhaps are just seeing the headlines and thinking people are leaving or foregoing principles for the dollar, and it's certainly not what we're doing. And I think that's brought some hesitancy to some decisions, or kept people on the sidelines.
Miss Philly, anything that you would like to add to that?
Um, yeah, I would say that the regulatory environment and for a while, I mean, it was article after article about another bank under consent, another bank under a C&D, and the most common thread weaving all those together was BaaS. And for a long time, and sometimes for very good reasons, it became a bad word. So if you look at a more potentially risk-averse community bank that doesn't have the well, I wouldn't say the wherewithal, but really the appetite to take on that type of regulatory environment, I think it just makes it for a very difficult conversation. Now, all that said, there's absolutely a way to do it right. And I think that banks that do it right, A, will still be here in 10 years without the FBI knocking on their doors. Um, and uh, and we'll really have built a stronger banking environment because of it. We can get into kind of the history of BaaS and the history of fintech in a little bit if you'd like, but that this industry has truly transformed banking across the board, not just for the underbanked and the unbanked, but really for folks like us who have potentially broader access to banking resources and to technology that make day-to-day banking easier. So I think it's definitely it has tremendous potential to continue to transform banking. And I do think banks should go into it, but I think banks should go into it similarly to how we have. Could we have gone live in 6 months? Absolutely. I'm still here 2 years later, and we're launching our first client hopefully shortly. But in that time, we've built a team that it truly should be the envy of the space. Our CTO has about 15 years of experience. Our head risk manager, specifically for BaaS, has about 18 years, including a few years in audit. So folks are coming, and that's not to mention our BSA officer, our CFO, a number of folks under them. So it takes a serious amount of commitment, and it takes a serious amount of time to truly launch something that can stand the test of time and the constant testing by regulators. But I think it's the right way to do it, and I think it's a way that will be sustainable long term, and will be a benefit to the space rather than a detriment, in a way that some of these other banks have been.
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna begrudgingly agree with you. I think I want to. There was a point that you brought up, the new opportunities, and like for me personally, I'm able to work for a bank in Las Vegas, but I work from Sheldon, Missouri. Like, in what world did that seem realistic when we were growing up? It opens up, and you two are both much more traditional bankers than I am. And so I believe both of you came into your organization with the idea that embedded finance was the future. You were there to build it. So you might not have had the same challenges of like of characteristics that needed to change or thoughts that needed to shift, like resetting that mindset. I know I struggled. The previous organization, the board was a constant struggle, and even like probably to this day. But like, what sort of hurdles did you see or like did you have with either your current organization or would have had at a previous financial institution?
I will say that I'm incredibly fortunate, and that's also why I'm here. That the bank has been very supportive. If I say, look, we're looking at this tech provider, I know we're pretty far along with them. They just dropped some news that I think is very concerning. And I think we need to keep looking, even if that means that we have to push back launch another few months. The bank has not been in the place yet, hopefully, and it continues, and I do think it will continue. But the bank has not put me in a position where they're like, well, we really wanted to launch this by October, and the bank has been very deferential to our team because of our teams because of the extent of experience on the team. They fundamentally trust the people that they brought in. So here I've been actually incredibly fortunate to not have that pressure. If I say, hey, look, I'm concerned about X, Y, and Z policy and needing to strengthen or remove it, there typically isn't pushback as long as there's reasonable conversation to be had behind that. So again, I generally don't mind being more controversial, but I feel like I'm in a great place specifically because of the support that we've gotten really from the board, and then all the way through the executive team.
Amazing. Candidly, it's not something I know you don't take it for granted, but hopefully anybody else that's wanting to get into this space will have a similar experience. Steve, did you want to direct that as well to David? Were you
Yeah,
asking him?
absolutely. I'd be curious on his take of the like Academy Bank Armed Force. Like, what has been your experience there
Yeah.
or previous organizations, like their openness to like something new and innovative like this?
I mean, I think as Annalisa said, starts and stops with a supportive, committed leadership team. And we have that here. But I also I'm constantly challenged with communication, over communicate, education. And there have been times where pockets of the organization haven't been as informed as maybe I thought they were. And, continue to change the ways in which we communicate, share, and build consensus. And I think we'll just continue to do that. And we're becoming a stronger organization around communication through all those efforts.
Wow. I dare say that's where so many organizations could lean in and build a little bit more muscle there. I know it's been true several times in my past as well. So congrats, Academy Bank.
Yeah.
I'm going to take things back, Steve, for just a moment. I'm going to steal and wrench control back from you for just a second, because I guess I'm curious. While Annalisa and David are both at different stages of the implementation process or the process of BaaS in their bank, I bet they can at least visualize or answer how banking as a service may have impacted their current community bank. I'd love to hear a little bit more about this. David, I'll start with you since you all are live right now. Have you seen any strategic impacts or super tangible impacts that banking as a service has brought to the local community and the way you?
Yeah, I think our first fintech partner was big into supporting those with low or no credit and helping them help build that up. We are committed to that space already, but I think our fintech partnership has opened the eyes of our traditional bankers and our traditional products about another similar use case and how they go about their business. What does that product look like? How do they serve their customers? And, we haven't made full conclusions on how we could better our product and better ourselves for our community, but I think there's already been learnings. And that's one. And the second one is, as I mentioned, we have two bank brands, Armed Forces Bank and Academy Bank. And if we look at the US, somebody might only know Academy Bank if they're in our three main cities in Northwest Arkansas, right? So, but they see Armed Forces, and there's like, well, geez, I'm not in the military. That's not the bank for me. And so we look at the way in which we brand, and some of the sort of embedded in fintech mindset is influencing, how do we think about our brand into the future? Not announcing anything yet, but we are looking at our brand across the US, and I think it's buoyed by the successes we're having in embedded banking.
Nice. Very nice. Well, and what I love about your opening story there with the fintech that's serving, underserved community, unbanked communities. First of all, it's a beautiful mission, but it's also technology you didn't have to go out and seek. You didn't have to develop. You didn't have to partner with a vendor and deploy. It's being done directly through this fintech partner, and it seems like it's supporting and propping up a mission that you already had.
Yeah, and another activity that we haven't necessarily planned it yet, but I do want to follow through with it. But we have a subset of our customers in our traditional bank that are also customers of our fintech, unrelated. They got there independently, and it numbers in the thousands, I think. And having a listening tour with them on their experience with us from a traditional standpoint, and then also our fintech partner independently, I think we learn a ton. So.
Oh, that is a really cool exercise. I see Steve and Annalisa both shaking their heads. They're writing that down, David. That's going to be filed away for the future for both of them. Well, Annalise, let me turn this over to you because you are at this stage where launching with your first partner is just right around the corner. Have you already started thinking about the types of partners you're going after, whether they're going to help grow deposits, whether these are going to be payment-oriented type of partners or lending, and what effect that might have on the community bank focused there in a really cool, fun area of Missouri, the Lake region?
It's almost like you're listening to our board calls and our executive meetings. Literally, a conversation that we're having almost on a daily basis is, what does the trajectory of this business line look like? What particular products are we focused on? And I would say yes. I think the path forward for us is really very clear. It's supporting debit products. It's supporting payment products. We may go into secured cards in the future, but I don't see that as happening immediately. Really, from a strategic perspective for the bank, it's just not what makes the most sense. We are complementing a very strong business line that already exists, so that's really our main goal initially. And then we do expect that the particular business line, the attention will shift to more specific verticals as we continue to grow. And I think that shift is natural. Part of it will be led by industry and what's going on in the industry, and also, obviously in parallel with a bank need and what specifically we're looking for. But yes, we have a 3-year plan that has a very nuanced answers to all of that. But I would summarize it by saying debit payments and potentially eventually secured credit.
Nice. So those transaction related fees will ultimately have, and I'm sure that's a big part of the play, maybe platform fees, transaction related fees. Those are going to have some tangible benefits as well that you can apply across the board, even to the traditional bank, which is fantastic. Well, Steve, I know you guys are also, you're a little earlier in the process, I think it's fair to say, than Annalisa and her bank, but are you guys looking right now, the organization, as far as, or are you hoping to park money in deposits? And you don't have to give us the full playbook, or drive transaction fees, do lending related, a combination thereof. And are you thinking already of how that's going to affect the Vegas residents and community members?
Yeah, so I mean the great thing about this space is that you know I could tell you the playbook, and there's not enough competition right now that it would matter because there's not enough sponsor banks out there.
Yeah.
However, like, I do want to like kind of bring back to the earlier point is like both when David and Annalisa were talking, each time they had this very I like identified this is the line of our business, our strategy. We have this niche, just like a traditional community bank might be ag lending, or they might be focused on like SMBs, or they're consumer, like they're leaning into retail. So it's really BaaS is no different than your traditional banking. It's just a new model of doing business. You know, my so we're going to focus on consumer programs that have a large user base is really where we're going. We're not as focused on deposits. Previously, I was focused on more commercial and deposits. So there are many different ways you can go about it, and you can still have a very defined community that you're going to go and provide those services to.
Okay, wonderful. And is the effect, are you getting into BaaS to completely just grow this new and exciting area of the bank, or are you also trying to translate that back to Bank, community bank, traditional customers, or will that just happen naturally?
I think it happens naturally. There's going to be a Venn diagram of traditional community bank, new community, and then that overlap will happen organically. Um, to me, it's about how do I stay relevant? How do I meet my customers where they are? I can't just sit in the bank and wait for my customer to come to me anymore. I can be there. Oh, I'm in the drive-through, and they're going to drive up and transact with me. I'm going to have to find a way to get into their phone because that's where they're transacting today. That's where they're like looking at business. That's where they're playing games. They're doing whatever it is they're doing. I have to find a way to get there because they're not coming through that drive-through lane.
Yeah, that's true. I guess what I'm really trying to get at, you guys tell me if I'm off base here as operators in this space, because what I do think about is whether you are opening accounts, deposit accounts for end users of a fintech, whether you are processing payments, like it sounds like Annalisa, especially you, that's a direct focus, or whether there are some lending related plays. Whatever's done in BaaS and this new and exciting vertical can have financial benefits for the traditional bank side. That's at least something I have in my mind. I don't see that there's this wall that says, no, 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 our income, our revenue, not yours. I do see from the deposit play, those banks that are interested in going that route, using those new deposits to fund their loan portfolio. Agree or disagree? I do see payment related fees and interchange revenue, et cetera, being able to also have not only this benefit to grow the BaaS side of the house, but also to have benefits on the traditional side. Am I being too Pollyanna-ish about this? You guys, you can tell me if I need to take off my rose-colored glasses, but I just see it benefiting both sides.
No, I would say ideally they're perfect complements to each other. And I think that's one thing that's particularly interesting about this bank specifically, that the GGL side is just a perfect complement to banking as a service. Now you don't get that in some other places, so then the focus shifts, right? So if you're a bank that's already too heavy on deposits, then bringing in deposits maybe isn't interesting. Maybe what you
Good
really
point.
need to focus on is your NIM. And you know, obviously that changes how you approach the industry and what types of partners you bring on. I would say our case is probably fairly unique. So they're perfect complements at this point.
Okay, amazing. David, agree, disagree? Steve?
Totally agree. I mean, we are a $4.5 billion institution. We have aspirations to get above 6. And our banking as a service practice will be a significant contributor to that growth, along with other parts of our business, for sure.
Amazing. All right. We are down to about 12 minutes, Steve. I will invite you to ask a question and then I'm going to take it back. I'm going to take the last one.
Oh, I was saving my question for last.
All right. Well, I can go. I can absolutely go. And actually, this is not even something that is as much of a question as an observation, you guys. So here we are talking about banking as a service as a route to expand your perception of your current community bank or to build and foster an entirely new one. And as someone that has been to a lot of events over the course of my 28-ish plus year career in this space, from the vendor side, never from the banker side, which is, I dare say, way more fun than being the vendor trying to get your attention, guys. But as somebody that's been at these events and had a chance to meet each of you personally through Steve, one thing I have noticed about the embedded banking space or banking as a service FIs is how close knit you guys are. This is not like the competitive environment that I am used to seeing across all of the events I've attended, where traditional community banks, through no fault of their own, it's just the setup that they've been given, they have certain levers that they can pull. And a lot of times it is rate oriented. And as our good friend Amanda Swoverland from Unit would call it, it's a knife fight in the streets over CD rates and lending rates. And those are the biggest things that you have in community banking. Or you can roll out a new product, but then guess what? The bank down the road is also likely going to develop a new product or roll out a competing piece of new technology. So we see this constant leapfrogging on a traditional community banking side. My perception, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that leapfrogging and just the setup of the players leads to the natural competitive and animosity that we see. And I'll tell a story on myself here. I felt this as well, working for a vendor, working for Jack Henry. I would be in an airport. If I saw a Fiserv name tag on somebody's backpack, I purposefully, I'm ashamed to say, but I would think about, what if I just tripped them? What would happen? Like that is just not even the person I am, but I had the thought and I never did. Full disclosure, but it's that type of competition where you are absolutely fighting against someone. It is that knife fight in the street. I am so blown away that it's not the same in the embedded banking space. You guys are actually friends and you guys are hanging out together at events. We're attending the same events with great organizations like the AFC or other technology providers that serve across these spaces. Is that just me noticing this anomaly, or have you felt that and noticed that too?
I tried a couple of times. I tried a couple of times to trip Steve, but I was unsuccessful. So after
He's
that, I
spry.
decided.
I'm very spry. I'm
He's
wiry.
spry.
And
Bouncing.
after after that, I decided that it was probably more important to be collaborative than competitive. But I do think it's a great observation. From my perspective, there's so much business to be had in this space, and it's so difficult to do it right. The moats are just almost undescribable. It's I think you'll find that a lot of us feel like we're in the same boat, trying to build something that is responsible and sustainable, and that can really help to continue to transform the industry. So, yes, you'll see that. I think you'll continue to see that across the board, that there's a lot more collaboration. Who are you using? How is it working? Do you like their approach? Are you seeing any challenges? And folks tend to be very open with those discussions, and very open with giving each other advice. I actually kind of take a degree of pride in being that person and also in receiving that information. So yeah, I think it's a great observation, and I do think it's probably relatively unique to this space. It certainly wasn't like that when I was at Citibank or Bank of America either. I didn't try to trip anybody, but but it is a good thought.
I've grown as a person. I found some peace. No, I don't know if that's true, but no. What about you, David? Thank you, Annalisa.
I totally agree. I mean, I've lost count how many times I've taken an inbound call or connected with somebody and then introduced them to somebody and used the term friend, not my contact in the industry. Right? These are friends that you're introducing to others. We're trying to do the best for the industry. That's all good.
Yeah. Steve?
Yeah, you're not having your customer appreciation fighting over who gets to give the hot dog to the customers. They can like who are you taking care of? You know, I think back and I had a branch in the same metro area as David. Instead of like fighting, like, oh, how are we gonna over a commercial customer? We called like, are there ways we can have participations? Can we do loans and help each other out? I think with embedded finance, part of it is there's a lack of competition because lack of sponsor banks. But I've talked to both of these two about programs that didn't fit into my strategy. They didn't fit into mine. But these fintech founders, I wanted to help them out. And so I introduced them to Annalisa or David and other bankers. It's not a mutually exclusive game where I win or they win. I think both from the banking side or from the fintech side, you're really building a community. It is a community. I mean, that's at conferences, you see that. It's just not tied down geographically like we've always seen historically in community banks.
So you're
Yeah.
saying it's not like football?
Yeah, it's we prefer to have better taste than people from certain regions in the country in football. Uh,
It
so
is
we are
so,
running up on time.
yeah.
And before I remind everyone to like amBaaSsador's LinkedIn and subscribe to our newsletters. And Elisa and David, what uh, what advice would you give to a community bank that's just wanting to learn about embedded finance or like the what would you say if they're trying to get into it?
I would say you can't dip your toe in the water. If you're in, you're in. You've got to make the right investments, get the right people in the door, trust them, and let them build, get out of their way. If you can't do any one of those items, don't get into it. It is too much regulatory exposure, and we want more company, right? We want more sponsor banks in this space to refer clients that we can't help, but you can't dip your toe in the water. At the end of the day, if you don't do it right, it's a black eye on the entire industry, and we all wind up paying for it for years to come. And that's not a situation that we want to be in, and certainly not a situation we want to put the end consumer in. No one, where your money is and how to get it out should not be a guessing game for anybody.
Yeah, I'll just add, or add a couple points. It's an endurance sport, so similar to don't tip your toe in the water, but it's an endurance sport. You got to stay at it. You got to be committed to it, and talk to if you're a bank, talk to anybody. Just like we said, there's collaboration out there. Talk to banks. Talk to your presumed competitors, consultants. There's independent consultants. There's compliance advisory consultants, and they can all help you round out your strategy and help you achieve your strategy. And then lastly, I mean, you can't come into it and not change as an organization. So you might have the right talent or you might need to add talent in certain areas. So expect to, incrementally change your organization to achieve your goals.
Yeah, I love it. Steve, what about you? You asked the question. I'm going to ask it back to you though.
I think it's learn about it, learn as much as you can, and talk to people, connect with David and Annalisa, Stacy, myself on LinkedIn. If you have specific questions, also follow amBaaSsador. But like, send DMs, ask questions, go to conferences, talk to them. It is the relationships that I've gained from just exploring this space have been just wonderful, and it's a great community to be a part of. So it's really educate yourself, learn, build that, and either decide if you're in or out, and then go 100% in that direction and define what's right for your institution to make sure that you're relevant and have the right strategic map for the future.
Yeah. And I'll put a pin in this one or bring this one to a close because I do think I heard many of you saying the same thing. in different ways. And I think the main takeaway, and I'll start, Steve, with yours, because you mentioned something just about education, and that is, don't hesitate to reach out to Annalisa, David, Steve, myself, anyone else that you see out there talking about banking as a service, because these individuals, these thought leaders truly do, as you heard them say, want more banks like you in this space. They want to build their own community of bankers and peers that they work with and that they refer business to, because that's just how this space operates. I think you also heard that when you commit to banking as a service, you need to commit to banking as a service. It is going all in, as Annalisa mentioned, and to David's point as well, give yourself ample time to see the success. The chances of you seeing success in 3 months or 6 months are very ambitious. I'll say that. Give yourself a longer period of time, because you're building something that's going to produce for you for a much longer period of time. So be realistic with your payback period and what you hope to accomplish. Ultimately, befriend the space and just be a good citizen of the space, so that we can keep the amazing things happening in banking as a service, and how we can embed our banking services into new fintechs. Keep that going and keep it exciting. With that, I want to thank Annalisa and David for you also joining us, standing in for Mark. Mark, we're
Stacy,
thinking about you. Yes?
yes, I also want to thank them, but before we go, let's I do want to announce the upcoming series
Mm-hmm.
that we're going to have here. So Layers and Players in October. We're going to have our software enablements, like your Sidecore subledger middleware, if you will. Some people don't like that name, but be on the lookout for that. It'll be a great. We're going to have a whole slew of these, each layer of embedded finance. So we're excited about that. If you're going to be in Money
Yeah.
2020, we're excited to see you there. And what else am I missing out, Stacey?
No, I think you just mentioned it with the Layers and Players. First one up, October 9th. We'll be announcing that this Friday. The true goal of it is to help us just serve up the research, serve up the players in the space, so that you don't have to spend the time that I know each of these individuals and their teams had to go through, the months and the years involved. Let's come join us, learn about the space, and learn who can help you on your mission. With that, you all, again, sending our love to Mark Rayberger and his family. And David, thank you again for joining us. Ms. Annalisa, always a pleasure. We'll see you guys at Money 2020.
See you
All right.
then. Thank
Take
you
care.
all.
Thanks.
You
Take care.
all.
See ya.
Bye-bye.